Welcome to episode 80 of the XRM Toolcast. In this episode, Scott and I speak with Kristine Kolodziejski about all the amazing things she's doing with Canvas apps and making them look even better than you could possibly imagine, revolving mostly around neomorphism, which was new to me, and if it's new to you, this is definitely the episode to watch. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the XRM Toolcast. With me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and Scotty, now invincible DeRose. Scotty, how's it going? You've overcome the COVID, it sounds like.
Yes, absolutely. Normal. I've just added another immunity to my belt. I mean, you know. To be honest, it wasn't bad. I mean, when you posted on various different social media channels, Scott's sick, he can't attend. It was like people reaching out to me. My goodness, what's wrong? And I was like,
I called it out that it wasn't like he's saying he's like in the throes of death. He just wasn't able to communicate very well. So sorry if I had some, if I caused you to get like a whole week's worth of food delivered or something. Or maybe I'm not. Maybe that's a good thing.
No, it's good. I mean, I took a couple of days off and just sort of did a bit of reading and, chilled out. It was quite nice, really, other than, feeling like my throat was on fire and I couldn't really go very long without coughing. But yeah, it was okay. I'm feeling much better now. Thank you, Daryl.
Okay.
But I've been enjoying reading actually all of the 2022 Wave 2 release notes, which has obviously just come out. Actually, having said that, I've mostly been reading everyone's top 10, take on the release notes, and I do enjoy reading everyone's take on them. Different people have different varied. It's like, are we talking about the same release notes? Because people are so much more excited about one topic than another, or vice versa. So, yeah.
There are two types of people: those that read the top 10s of other people's release notes stuff, and those that read the release notes. I am not in the reading the release notes crowd. I read everybody else's stuff. So, but
yeah, they're just dry, aren't they? You read the release notes, and then it's like, actually, much more interesting reading everyone else's take on them, because then they pick out lots of different things. Yeah,
that's why I'm glad I'm not the only MVP. I have all these other people.
Yes.
So, anyway.
What is it about being on the shoulders of others or something? I don't know.
Standing on the shoulders of giants.
Something. Yes.
There. Yeah. So our guest today is a principal technical consultant, a gamer girl, drummer girl, a piano girl, a dog mom, and coding pretty things. Prin CSS. I love that hashtag Prin CSS. It's just very nice. Kristine Kolodziejski.
Yes,
if I say it really fast, I just kind of put together. My kids and I have fallen in love with. There's a YouTuber that does like language things, and like he's been going through like French is like silly, and like he's going through like all these words are the same word in French, and why is it the same word? And the American, I think, was French toast was lost toast. Like if you like a direct literal translation was lost toast. And so he's acting as like the universal language, and he's asking like French, hey, what should we call this thing? And he's like, I've lost mine. He's like, well, that's it. We'll call it lost toast. And the American there is eating. He eats all of his toast, and then he's eating another one. He's like, were you just eating yours? Like, whose toast is that? I was like, well, it's French toast. Oh, it's French's toast. Like that. And so that was the fun naming thing. So I don't know. It's silly things that I come up with.
You're good at pronouncing things, Daryl. I mean, that's you've had a lot of pronunciation practice, so to.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think you did pretty well there. I think you did pretty well there. Good. For the sake of the recording.
It's lovely to have you on, Kristine. And I very much enjoyed your posts about your piano playing. Very impressive.
Thank you.
Is that something you've been doing a long time? Is it a kind of long-standing hobby for you?
Yeah, so I used to play quite professionally back in school. So I used to play drums and piano quite professionally, I'd say. And then I moved to the UK. Yeah, quite professionally means I'm not a pro, but an enthusiast, I guess. And then I moved to the UK and I kind of stopped because I never had the time to kind of get a piano or the drums, and I'm just about getting back to it now. So yeah, I'm at the level where you can tell me to play a song and I'll listen to it for 10 seconds and I'll be ready to kind of play. Yeah, some songs are obviously much harder, but yeah, that's really it. I've always loved music. Like music is a big part of my life, and yeah, it's just really therapeutic, I guess. Playing, you can probably see the electric drums in the back as well. Yeah, that's what keeps me going. So if I can't solve a technical problem, I tend to just go on the drums, smash the hell out of them, and then come back to it again 5 minutes later.
It's cheaper than just destroying your keyboard, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly,
you know, it's
exactly.
Like...
And the funny part is, you may spend a half an hour working through the problem at your computer, and then you may spend 15 minutes at the drums and figure it out playing the drums. But you can't bill for the drum time, even though that's the time you actually figured it out, right?
I know. It's an annoying part, isn't it?
I think you should build that into the whole billing model. I mean, you know, it's like, it's all part of the process. Yeah. So, but that's a really clever, that's a really special skill to be able to listen to a piece of music and then be able to play it. I mean, you know, it's this one thing being able to sort of read music and you know, have that sort of very classical trained approach, but to actually be able to do things by ear, that's a really special and very talented. So
thank you. I tend to look at it this way. To me, I like to break down things rather than kind of think that they are kind of amazing and stuff. So to me, it's just really muscle memory. You know exactly where the notes are, so you know exactly what you want to hit. That's how I look at it. So you can, I think when you see people, you know, playing with their eyes shut, it's not because they know exactly what notes there are. It's because they know where that sound is actually located on the keyboard. I think that's probably the easiest way to look at it. You remember the sounds, and then you can just play any song. Yeah.
Well, the one thing I did notice, and I constantly, because my daughter plays the piano, and one thing I always telling her off about is she loves to grow her nails, and but I say, oh, you can't do that because piano teacher says you need to cut your nails. So what's the lowdown? What's your opinion? Is it, can you play I mean, let's see your nails right at the moment. There we go. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, for those of us who are not watching on YouTube, Kristine's nails are absolutely amazing.
I think you'd stay there quite long, I guess. Yeah, I think, again, and I think it's just getting used to it. So I've always had like long nails. I love having nails. And then I find that I type as well with my nails. So if I lose a nail, like as an example, you can see I lost my nails. I'm getting them done tomorrow, which is why I didn't show the whole hand because there's a couple of minutes. So when I type, I tend to type with like the tip of the nail. And if I lose one or I break a nail, I suddenly struggle to type. It's like my speed goes from like 70 to 10 words per minute because I'm hitting all the wrong buttons as well. So I'd say it's really the same with the piano. You kind of you get used to it, and you obviously kind of hear when you click in on the nail as well. You get that kind of little click sound. But if your daughter wants to have nails, just let us have nails, Scott. I hope she watches this and thinks, I'm going to get some nails now.
Yeah, I'll need to direct the piano teacher to this as well. You know.
That reminds me of any of you watched Homestar Runner? Like when I was in college, so it would have been you know after you got to college, Scott and Kristine. I have no idea what where you're at before or after me, but Homestar Runner. Anybody watch that? It's a cartoon. It was online. One of the main characters, his name was Strong Bad, and he always wore boxing gloves, and he's shirtless with boxing gloves and a Mexican wrestling mask. And he always was typing on his computer in his boxing gloves. And so there was one episode where someone's like, why don't you get some fingers so you can type on your computer? He's like, okay. So he puts like wax candle, like he like glues some stuff on it. So he's trying to type and it's hitting all these other keys as he types. And that just, that just reminded me of, trying to type with, something that you're not used to that someone else wouldn't be able to do, but you're like, oh yeah, this is the way I always do it. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh,
yeah.
So, this is not necessarily a typing show. It could be.
Oh no,
else,
but that's what I came here for.
No. You feel very much the yin to my yang, and I don't make things pretty, and so I always appreciate people that have that skill because I was like, wow, and And it's not just, oh, I put a Unicode emoji in somewhere, which is great. And there's lots of things like, oh, I didn't even think of that. It's simple. But then you're adding a lot of other stuff as well. So, and you're introducing new words to me, like neumorphism. Right? Is it neumorphism? I think it's neumorphism. Right?
Yeah, so people call it differently. It's neumorphism, neomorphism, soft UI. People call it all kind of different ways.
So this whole idea, I believe after researching it, so this is like someone that's barely started here, it is just that it looks more real lifey. Is that kind of what it is? Yeah, it's realistic. Is that explaining that?
Yeah, so it kind of evolved a little bit from skeuomorphism. So you may have seen kind of skeuomorphism alongside neumorphism. So skeuomorphism was the kind of Apple iOS in 2018-19, where all of the emojis were really detailed with a lot of kind of details, very realistic 3D-like. But because of how much detail there was on every kind of icon and every button, it gets pretty tiring to your eye very quickly as well. Because if you have too many colors, you have too many textures on your screen, your eyes kind of get tired. So that never really took off properly. And then I think towards the end of 2019, one of the kind of UX UI gurus posted about neumorphism and creating kind of real life like buttons, and it took off, but it caused a bit of an uproar as well in the community, in the design community. There's obviously a lot of accessibility concerns around neumorphism in general. Obviously, you have a lot of kind of monochrome tones in your design. You have a lot of kind of blurred box shadows at the back as well. So the main accessibility problem was the color contrast, so between the box shadows and obviously your kind of main control, and really around the not being able to see where there is a difference. If you're using like a low color filter as an example, low vision filter, you're not able to actually see that there is a button there because it's just so kind of blurred and merged with the background. Another issue was around the kind of, like I said, the monochrome tone. So because everything is gray, everything is dark, you lose that contrast very quickly as well. But there are so many ways that you can actually improve that as well. So you can implement more kind of defined box shadows. So make sure that the contrast between the box shadow and whether that's inset or obviously sitting on the outside, it's more defined. So it creates that contrast. Make sure that you have things like on hover events and you can see that someone's hovered over a button. Obviously tooltips, increase those contrasts and everything else. So if done correctly, it can be accessible and beautiful at the same time. I mean, one thing I love about neumorphism is that it is quite, it's just elegant, isn't it? I think that's the kind of word I like.
Well, this is this was the thing really that caught both Daryl and I's eyes, is that recently you put this toolkit, this PowerApps set of components for people to download, which is truly beautiful. So it's the Neumorphic library that you've created, and it, people are looking at it and just like, is this really a Canvas app? It's especially people who are so used to using just the standard buttons that you get with Canvas apps, because let's face it, they really are quite boring. And even if you use the sort of the themes to create sort of a consistent layout and consistent color scheme, they are really not that inspiring. So when you put this post out, it really inspires people's imagination. And so obviously you are a very, very creative person. And with all your music and so how did you get here? I mean, what's the origin story of kind of coming?
What are you doing here?
Bringing, I mean, like all of this musical talent, and all of this, creative talent, and obviously you've got such an interest in user interface design languages and things like that. I'm guessing you've done quite a bit of sort of front end work, HTML front end work. What kind of brought you to the Power Platform and PowerApps?
Yeah, no, so it's been quite a journey, I must admit. So straight after school, I decided that I wanted to be a police officer. So rather than go to anywhere else, I decided to join the police force and then train to be a special force police officer. So kind of the equivalent of SAS in England or SWAT in America. And did that for 6 months, didn't quite enjoy it as much as I wanted to. So I decided to move from Poland to England. And found a job. My first job in the UK was working in the JD Sports warehouse carrying boxes, working night shift. So that wasn't the most exciting. And then I found a job in business administration and business management, did some qualifications and didn't quite enjoy it as much as I wanted to. So I managed to get a role in SharePoint administration. That was around 6 years ago alongside a business management role. And I loved it, but I knew that wasn't quite enough. So although I knew I wanted to move to the IT space, I've always loved IT in general, loved programming. When I was 15, I used to write various stuff as well. And I knew I wanted to kind of continue that route. So I learned how to do HTML, CSS, JavaScript along the way, and then kind of continued that journey. So I got a role in proper IT. I joined a department that was literally full of proper IT people, you know, people that have been in the industry for 30, 40 years that know pretty much anything about a firewall, VNet, you know, all of that stuff. And something you have
IT people.
Yeah. You have, and then I joined them, and I feel bad for them because they obviously expect me to know a lot of this stuff. But I don't, you know, I don't know how to build a firewall unless you go to Azure, obviously, and build a firewall. So it was a tough journey, and I had to learn everything very quickly in a very short amount of time. And then we were deploying Microsoft 365 to the organization. That was around three years ago now. We were deploying that, and then just kind of sideways, I got recommended to have a look at the Power Platform. So I attended one of the Power App in a Day hosted by Microsoft. That was just over 3 years ago, and I loved it. I was hooked. You know, I loved it. I knew that the kind of fusion development, so between kind of low code and then pro code was the kind of way to go. And yeah, ever since I've been hooked. So for the last kind of, I guess, around 12, 15 months, I've been trying to kind of push the boundaries of design in PowerApps and do things that PowerApps are not necessarily meant for, I guess. So last year, I think when I got on LinkedIn, because I've only been on LinkedIn, believe it or not, 11 months. So I haven't even been there that long.
It feels like you've been there, like you've always been doing this stuff. I mean, it's like
I know. It's just been a crazy time because, it hasn't been a year because I signed up end of August last year, I think it was. And then one of my first posts was a mock-up of a Windows XP in PowerApps that I posted last year. So that was like a sign-in. I think I still have it somewhere in my environment. I could show you later on.
Is that just a challenge to do that, or do you have a business case where you wanted to do a business?
No, so I was literally, I think it was like a hackathon that I saw someone do. And I was like, I want to do something creative that's kind of not out of the box. And decided to take up Windows XP on the 20th anniversary of Windows XP and did that. So you had all of the kind of old-fashioned icons of Windows XP, you know, the kind of blue bar, start bar on the bottom with the green button, the nice, obviously, background and stuff. And yeah, that got some interest, and it kind of started to motivate me to kind of go down that route. I think, like you said, Scott, you know, there's a lot of I guess, bad press around UI in PowerApps, and there's no kind of lying about it. If you want to make an application look okay, you can, but there's only so much you can do with just out-of-the-box controls that you can use. So yeah, that's how my journey started, and I guess I'm here now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's kind of it's fitting, really, that first post on LinkedIn was about the XP UI and making it look like, because, you know, that's basically a skeuomorphic UI, you know, the whole kind of 3D buttons. And I mean, I've done a lot of work with DAWs, you know, for music production, and, you know, where you've got little dials that have got like shadows so it makes them look like a real dial and a button that's actually press in, and it's a real button. And like you say, it does get a little bit tedious after a while, because there's a lot of extra information on the screen that really is not relevant. And then so obviously, you know, we've got a very much a minimalistic approach with Windows today. You know, it's much more, well, certainly with the Fluent UI design and the modern was it Metro design language before it was called that, very flat, very minimal. And so it's almost like, you know, we go in these cycles, don't we? It's like people go, oh, we need everything really exciting and really creative. And, oh, now it's too complicated. Let's go back to a such more minimal. And then people get bored with the minimalistic, and then, I need a little bit more interesting. So it almost feels like we're coming out of that minimalistic view into people want a little bit more excitement again out of their UIs.
Yeah, definitely. And I think yeah, sorry, go on, Scott.
I was just saying, is what was the inspiration for you to start using the, neumorphic design language?
Yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, I downloaded an application, a home application, kind of smart home app, to connect my lights in the background, and it had a bit of neumorphism to it, and I thought, this looks really nice and cool. I love it. I've seen it somewhere before, and I don't know why I don't see it more. And I started kind of looking into it, see what I like about it. Obviously, the accessibility was kind of a big part of that as well. And then I thought, so I know how to do this in like front end dev. That's not a problem at all. If I want to spin that up in VS Code, that's fine. But how am I going to do this in a Power App? how am I even going to kind of approach it? So obviously, when you think of code in Power Apps, you'll know, Scott, you either go the PCF route or you go kind of component in the app instead. And yeah, so I thought I'm going to tackle the kind of standard low code way first, kind of fusion of low code and pro code, and then see what I can achieve in the Power App. And then if I can't, I'll make the whole thing PCFs. So started playing around to see what I can actually achieve. So started playing around with the box shadow, and it kind of hit me that it's much simpler than it might seem on the surface, because all we are really doing is we have like a Boolean value. So if we press the button, we want the box shadow to be a form value. If we unpress the button, so press it again, we want that box shadow to be slightly different. So that's all we're doing. Now, the problem that we obviously have is that we can't pass on hover events as an example with PowerApps. So that's a big problem. So if you hover over something and you just have a HTML control there that can't tell you that you've hovered over it, it's not great from user experience perspective, because you don't know if that's a button, you don't know if that's just a text, and then it's not very kind of accessible for people using screen readers and everything else as well. So then I thought, I'm just going to lay a button on top of that. So I put like a transparent button on top with a nice kind of gray transparency added on top. And then that kind of created a nice kind of hover effect when you hover over the button. And then the kind of cherry on top, I guess, was the SVG. So obviously with icon sets in the Power App, we're quite limited. I think there's around 30, 40, but you are very limited as to what you can do. So you can obviously change the color, you can, rotate them and then do all of that stuff. But if you want to do things like linear gradient, if you wanted to look nice and shiny, you wanted to have some kind of nice glow around the edges, you can't do that. You're literally stuck. So, so SVG was obviously the route to kind of take. And yeah, I did that, and then that creates the button. So I decided to create kind of 6 buttons with the SVGs. One of them was obviously the Microsoft logo as well. And I thought, I'm going to see what people think about this before I even make it a post or go anywhere kind of down that route. I'll see what people think about it. So I posted it on LinkedIn with just a simple animation to say, I'm playing around with this. What do people think? And it kind of just started from there. It's just people were just like, is it really Canvas app? How did you do this? How do we or how do we do this in the Canvas app was the kind of most kind of fascinating question. It's like, wow, so people actually like this. And then it got so many comments, it got so many shares, and people were like, oh, can you blog about this? How do you build this? Where do we start? And all of that. And I was like, oh, okay, I might actually take that route then. So I blogged about it, how to create it, and then it kind of took Twitter by storm as well. I saw people posting about it, people trying it out, Louise Fries, Michael Roth, everyone trying out these buttons. And I thought, okay, right, this is giving me a bigger buzz than I thought it was going to give me. So I thought, we've got a button now. We need to do something else. Because if you obviously put just a button, like a neumorphic button against like the kind of flat UI in Power Apps, it's going to look a bit out of place, I guess. So that was the kind of inspiration for the whole toolkit. So I thought, because there is a lot of code that we're adding, obviously with the HTML control, then we have the SVG. For a person that's not very familiar with that, they might find it quite difficult or discouraging, because, it's a low-code platform. And I've had people say to me, why do we need all this code in the platform? It's not to kind of make it difficult. It's to show you that you can achieve a lot more than you can out of the box. And yeah, the idea for the toolkit was, for anyone that's a maker, can just take it, use it in the app, and then build something cool. So so I started building a toggle, then a star rating with SVGs, and all of that. And yeah, it's kind of ended up being a whole kind of toolkit with a color picker and everything else as well. So then I thought, kind of, we need to choose a kind of color theme for the whole thing as well. So obviously, originally I was going for a kind of ice blue, the original thing what I posted on LinkedIn. And then I thought, would be nice to have some kind of dark UI with that as well. So I did that. And then I thought, we're missing something more neutral. So not something like a nice blue color, but not a dark color either. And then I went for the silver. And yeah, now we have the three of them on GitHub. Again, it proved very popular. I only just posted it and it's already got like 600 likes, which is just insane, literally insane. I mean, the post that I made with a couple of weeks ago with the comparison between a kind of out of the box, like you said, Scott, out of the box and neumorphic design, I think that got like 2,000 likes and it had like 200,000 views. And I thought, wow, like, where's this come from? Literally, where has this come from? But it just shows that there is a lot of interest to kind of try and make applications a lot better. And I think we're just, as humans, we are relatively basic without obviously offending anyone. If you're not visually impaired, the first thing that your brain will process is what you see, obviously. So if it looks nice, it's much more pleasant to the eye. You're more likely to use it as a user. And if you're, sorry for the dog, you can see him in the background. It's much more pleasant to the user. It definitely improves the user experience, but also it's easier to sell. So if you're building an application for a customer, if you do, let's say, even a proof of concept, if that proof of concept looks nice, but doesn't quite do everything it should do in the demo stage, you're more likely to get the customer to think, you did all of that in such a quick amount of time. We want you on board. Let's buy that solution. So that was really the thinking behind it.
Well, you're absolutely right. Because Daryl, we've talked about this, haven't we, before, about this, the fact that if you've got something that looks nice, people are more likely to get excited and user adoption will go up. Even if perhaps you compromise on functionality, you can actually increase user adoption with making it look nice more than you can with user interface functionality. It's like, okay, do we make it look nice or do we add this new feature? Usually, if you want to drive user adoption, making it look nice is going to be your better option. But Daryl, you always leave it up to somebody else to make it look nice, right? We've talked about this, haven't you? You don't see that as your job at all.
It takes two things to do that, okay? It takes what you want it to be, and you have to think of something that looks nice, and then you have to be able to implement that. I suck at both things. Every time I let's put a gradient in it. I put the gradient, I was like, well, that sucks. That looks horrible. Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, this isn't. Whoever uses it, and then I just, I go back with whatever, I copy something. So, yeah.
Or you use Kristine's toolkit. I mean, this is the thing.
Well, now Now I can. Yeah. So I was editing an app for a client like this week, and I was like, I just followed your guys's your normal way of showing things. I didn't want to make it completely different. And in reality, I just didn't have a better idea. It wasn't great. I knew it wasn't great, but I mean, it was all right. I'll just follow your guys' colors and scheme and stuff. So, but so there's there's one thing. If anybody is brand new to Canvas apps or newish to Canvas apps, or is wanting to do design stuff in Canvas apps, Kristine had I don't know even what video it was in, but maybe it was just in her. Is that Canvas? You have a Canvas app that you just is on GitHub that's like, hey, here's how to do all these little things that you were walking through. Cool.
With Samuel,
So same, walking with Samuel on that one. And in there you've got just a simple little JSON blob object that defines your themes, and you can switch between themes, and you can then update your entire app. And if people would set up their app that way, I wish actually Microsoft would do that by default, and rather than having hard-coded values for each button, they have some predefined JSON. Here's the default, and then you're updating you may be updating that. You can update the default through there. You create your own defaults and whatever. That way, we're not having to copy and paste every single property that we want to deal with. So that's the pain point that I see when I have to go through and do that. do you just deal with that pain point, or do you have some tool or some way to make that a little bit easier, having to update all the different little properties you need to update for that?
Yeah, so the way I do it, and that's how I've done it with the toolkit as well. So your kind of starting point is, because obviously we can't declare CSS like we normally would and then do all of that fancy stuff, we have to resort to the low-code way. So the easiest way to do it is to declare it in the app on start. So if you want to declare a theme, let's say a light theme or whatever that might be, either set it in a variable. So if you only have one theme, set it in a variable, kind of a record in that variable with a couple of columns, or equally, if you want to give the choice, the ability to be able to switch between themes, so change to dark, change to high contrast as an example, you will then create an actual collection in there that you will be able to then reference. And then from there on, all you really have to do is just reference every single control to that collection. Now, it might seem very tedious at first, because
that's the part, like, how do you get around the tedious of that? You just deal with that. That's my issue.
Yeah. So the best way I found to do it is create a kind of admin screen as such, with all of the controls that you know you're going to use in your application. Change all of that and then point that to your app on start and just copy and paste them across to your screen. So that way you don't have to do this for all 500 controls. You do it for the 10 controls as an example, and then just literally copying and pasting them across to your app.
So I think I've done this before, but I was brand new in my journey in Canvas apps. I did a little bit. Well, I was thinking I wanted one control that if I changed the control, everything references that control, but that really kind of was a sucky way of doing it, and it was very
and it's also performance is kind of like you've got like a whole interdependency network of stuff that's not needed. I mean, like the PowerCat's creator kit that I worked on with Microsoft. You know, we've got like a theme designer that creates that big blob of stuff that you then pass to the controls that's used. But there's a lot of differing opinions. I mean, like obviously PowerApps itself has got a theme set of defaults inside it. So, that there are ways you can unpack the actual Canvas app, and then you can inject your theme that way. But, a lot of people are very differing in their view of how to do it. But that's, in a sense, I see that's one of the advantages of Canvas apps is that you can do all these different approaches, and they do accommodate whichever way you want to address it. And if you don't want to do it in one way, you can just, you can change it, and it's not really that hard to change and adapt it. But I do like the fact that when you install your toolkit, Kristine, you've got that app that really demonstrates how it all works, and you can pick your colors and see. So it's almost like the app is the theme designer in itself. It's sort of it's kind of built part of the parcel. But the thing I did notice is that you're not packaging it as a component library. Have you thought about moving it into more of a component library?
And now we're on to the part of the show where we tell people they need to change their things.
It's always going to happen. You've watched the show, Kristine.
So I did think of that. So the only reason why is because when I kind of was looking at component libraries that were still in preview, that was the kind of one thing. They've only just gone GA a couple of weeks ago, didn't they? And then the second part is that not everyone is yet comfortable with components libraries, so I thought, okay, we'll just do it this way for now. But they will definitely evolve to be a component library in the future as well.
Well, that was my next question. Is that on the books? So
I think now that they are in GA and I know they are fully supported, definitely, because and it won't even take that long to do anyway, because these are all wrapped in components anyway.
They're already just waiting to be shipped, and then I guess you can. Then you can publish updates to them.
Exactly.
So, if you make any, changes, then you can just install the latest version of that component library, and people can then just simply update their own local versions of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a better way to do it from the ALM perspective as well. So lots more coming. This is like kind of first release that I've been asked for a couple of weeks now. So it's definitely going to be evolving. A lot more stuff that I definitely want to add to that as well.
Is there any particular apps that you think that the Neumorphic style design language sort of suits? Like you mentioned your home, the home control, the stuff. Is there any do you have any kind of idea of advice to give people? Say, oh, well, it's best for this kind of apps, or it doesn't work so well in this particular type of app, or is there any kind of guidance you can give to people?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a really good question. So I'd definitely recommend using Neumorphic more for mobile phone applications than tablet form applications. The reason why is because in the mobile phone screen you'll have fewer controls on your screen. Now, if you have a tablet form as an example, and you have, let's say, a gallery with plenty of items, then you have plenty of kind of neumorphic buttons and neumorphic controls. It can be quite heavy on the eye as well, and it's quite a lot to consume. So in a more kind of specific and more detailed screen where you've got plenty of controls, you will probably want to use something like Fluent UI instead, or something more flat with not so many box shadows. Because obviously, if you have too many box shadow kind of controls at the back, they will start overlapping each other, and it will just not look quite as sleek as it will on a mobile phone. So I totally recommend using it for a mobile phone form instead. But in terms of the kind of type of application, it could be anything. It could be a HR application. If you look on a place that I love to get my inspiration from, dribble.com, I think every front end kind of dev will know that website very well. You can get a lot of kind of inspiration for your designs as well. So you'll have applications like HR onboarding, shopping applications. It really is just how you implement that thing and how you take on that design, because it's very easy to overdo it as well. I always think, try and be minimalistic. So don't overdo it with colors, don't overdo it with too many controls, and keep it simple. Keep it simple for the user. The more controls, the more details you have on your screen, the more confusing it will become for your user as well.
Yeah, that sounds like very, very good advice. And we can put a link to that that site in the podcast notes. And so if you see a particular use of the design language, I mean, what tools are you using? Because I love that blog you did on building the SVG and the HTML. You actually showed how, I think it was the menu, the menu bar component. And I love that because it's really sort of progressive. You show, okay, so we do like this particular thing, and you create something. Oh, and it doesn't look very good, and then let's add a little bit of shadow. Oh, it looks a little bit better, and hey, look, let's add it, and this is now starting to get really good. So
it's the story aspect of it, right? You're explaining the story. You go from here to here, which is how we all learn, how we figure things out. And when someone says, oh, you just do this, it's like that whole, how do you draw a horse? It's like 2 lines and boom, it's this amazing horse. Walking through that process, now you can learn how to do that process, right?
Yeah. And so the HTML that you're using, adding in box shadows, adding in gradients and things like that, is there any tools that you use to do that kind of HTML? I mean, obviously you could just open up VS Code and start writing your HTML, but is there any sort of UI design tools that you use that makes that a little bit easier rather than having to sort of hand code all of the HTML?
Yeah, so there's 2 kind of tools that I always recommend. So like I said, Dribble obviously is your kind of place to go if you want to get idea of how to design some things. If you're looking for a mobile app, you'll be able to see kind of the layout, how to make it look nice. And then these are all kind of contributors in the world that are producing them. From the kind of development perspective, so from the code perspective, another website that will be very familiar to pretty much every front-end dev, CodePen.io. I think if you've ever done front-end dev, you'll know that you can see how people have tackled a specific, let's say, CSS issue. If you want to do some kind of animation, you can see exactly how it was done. Now, the difficulty is that most of the time, let's say for an animation as an example, they will use obviously CSS and JavaScript. Now, we know that we can't implement JavaScript unless we use like a PCF control instead. So we're quite limited, and you end up having to try and find a work around it. So for me, if I see something animated with CSS and JavaScript, I will probably navigate to an SVG instead and build that in an SVG. So it's really kind of working around more than knowing what you're doing. That's what you end up kind of having to do. But yeah, CodePen.io, Dribble.com. I know people use Figma as well. I'm not sure if you can get kind of source code from Figma. I know you can get code for SVGs from Figma, but I don't think it will give you any kind of other CSS and anything else as well. And yeah, just like I said, just get inspired. if you've played around with things, you'll know exactly how to tackle the problem. And one thing that I like kind of doing on my blog as well, like you said, Scott, and I'm really glad you said that, is kind of demystify the whole thing. Because obviously, if you're a maker that's never touched code in your life, if someone shows you the code of an SVG icon as an example, they'll be like, what am I looking at? Why am I looking at it? I'm on a low-code platform. So one thing that I did with the button as well in the toolkit is, in a button, you can just type in a name of a supported icon that I've put in there, and it will automatically switch it over to the icon that you've typed. So you don't even have to go to the SVG code. You can just type in calendar, and it will switch that icon to calendar icon. So in my blog, I try to kind of demystify, and like I said, try and show the person what they will come across step by step. So rather than tell them, okay, you now do infuse CSS into that, and then I'll see you in the next episode, I want them to kind of learn along the way. And then one thing that I've really found satisfying is people on Twitter tagging me to say, Kristine, I've never done anything in code, and now I've coded a HTML control that looks like a menu. Thank you so much. And I think it just gives you a buzz. Not just that people are using your methods, but actually they are learning something new that they didn't know before. Is definitely very satisfying.
Well, there's whole rafts of people that would be very, well, I hasten to say arrogant and say, HTML is not code. You can't say HTML is code.
Let some of the Americanism come out of you, Scott. Come on, just say it. You're in Canada. It's close to America now. Come on.
It's code. It's whichever way you cut it, cut it. It's stuff that you're writing, especially if you're doing things like gradients and box shadows and using any kind of styles that are just more complex than simple colors. And I think that's what's quite nice about the approach that you show, is that you can do inline styles. You don't have to rely on, because if you look at places like Stack Overflow and then any of these places, you'll get these CodePen or gists or something, which have got like massively complicated CSS files, and trying to understand how all of the CSS relates to the various different divs in the HTML, it can be really quite complicated, especially when you've got cascading relationships between the two. Whereas the approach that you show in your blogs are, break it down to show you don't need to have that kind of level of complexity. In fact, you can't. That's just not the way it works. It's if you want a box shadow, you just put an inline box shadow style. If you want a gradient fill, you just put a gradient fill. And that's I think that's a very refreshing way of looking at HTML when it's used with PowerApps. And so I'm not surprised that how everyone is just suddenly now excited about it, because it's like it's empowering people to do things. Absolutely.
It's just, you can combine these things to create something that you thought wasn't really possible before, which is always kind of interesting, right? It's like the trick of you have the HTML control and you can do all this shadowing stuff that you didn't think was possible before, and you can't handle this here. If you had this little button here and have that be transparent, you can actually start doing cool. And so you can start those are just building blocks, and you put building blocks together in different ways, but it's just when people do something that you don't expect, like okay, that's great. It's my kids love playing Minecraft, and there's all these videos of people that do things like, if you hold a seed, chickens will get attracted to you. So someone made a door that was unlocked by holding a seed, because there was a chicken hidden behind the wall that started walking towards him and unlocked the door each time he did. So it's like, I never thought of taking that to open up a door. And so it's the same thing. I never thought of I could take a CVG and SVG and go through and do this little hack here and put this little bit of code in here and have it do something completely different. So I guess this leads me to here's my request. I have two requests. It may not be for you, maybe for somebody else. So abandon all your hobbies and learn WinForms so you can create not WinForms, but so there would be really interesting if there was an XORM toolbox tool. I don't think this would be too terribly hard, that would take the extracted out Canvas app and replaced all of your background fills and all that stuff, all the controls, with a standard JSON theme object. And so that way, people that say, "Oh, I can't go through and do that. I've got 5,000, not 5,000. I've got 500 controls in my app. I'm not going to go through and edit each one." Well, all right. Well, here, just run this, and create your theme and that looks like this structure, and then you can automatically start using it with your app right now in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It'd be an awesome tool. Then also having like an SVG editor where you're like, oh, if you want this, then it'll automatically put it in the right spot and give you like a preview. Like that would be a cool thing. It doesn't have to be in the external toolbox, but that's something that gets a lot of traction just because it's in there sometimes. Like my Outlook calendar thing, Bob, I put it in there. I was like, I've got way too many downloads for that thing. That thing isn't that good, but just because I put it in the toolbox, people use it.
No, I agree.
Or you can put it all on a website. I don't know. These are ideas. Things that go through my mind. That
no, definitely. No, that's a really good idea. Yeah.
You just say yes, Daryl. Yes. Yeah, yes, Daryl.
Yes, Daryl. Yeah. For the sake of the recording, I will say yes, Daryl.
That's what Jonas says.
That's a really good idea. And I think just going back to kind of the point of doing something out of the box, I guess, in a traditional way, like I said, you have a decision between a PCF or a component. Mm-hmm. Now, the idea was as well that if you want to go into the code of the component, you can just go to the components bar and start editing from there. Now, if you build a PCF, you can obviously do a lot more. I love building PCFs, but it's the kind of long-term support of that PCF control as well. And then if you want someone to unpack it or edit a single detail, it has to be dev to be able to find kind of the manifest file and everything else. So you end up kind of making that decision and it ended up having to be kind of a component. So I will have a look at your suggestion then, Daryl. I will say yes, Daryl. And
good move.
Yeah. I don't know if you're lying to me or not. I appreciate the effort.
It's the sentiment that matters. Let's face it.
No, I will have a look at it.
So what's next then for the toolkit? I mean, other than we talked about the canvas components, I mean, have you got any plan to build any components inside the actual toolkit?
Yeah, so there's plenty more. So this is the kind of like a first initial release. I want to do a lot more with the components. I want to build a lot more responsive components. So some of them are not responsive just yet. So I will work on that. And then I already have 3-4 ideas for another kind of set of toolkits as well. So plenty more coming, plenty of more blog posts coming as well. Starting a YouTube channel in a couple of weeks too. The YouTube channel will be focusing on both kind of technical and then visual side of things. But one thing that I will definitely be doing on there is something that I got inspired from by one of my favorite devs, front end devs. Kyle, he's got a tag, Web Dev Simplified on YouTube, or you may have heard of him before. And he does the CSS battles very often. And I love that. When you kind of get something, let's say you look at a design and you want to recreate that in CSS yourself, do stuff like that, or let someone submit an idea of a design and how I'd tackle that in a Power App. So that's what I've got coming up. Lots of stuff. And then I guess we'll just see where that takes off. But it's nice to kind of see that interest. I think just seeing that interest, see people reshare stuff is just really motivating to kind of continue making this space grow. And it is quite a niche area still, isn't it? There's not many people that have kind of touched this area too, which is probably why I think it's still so kind of fresh and exciting at the same time because no one's done that kind of stuff before. So I guess we'll just see where the year takes us.
Exciting. Yeah, I can't wait to see all of those. Yeah, and definitely be checking out your YouTube channel. And we'll make sure that we can put a link to that when you start it up. And sounds good.
Awesome.
Well, Kristine, is there anything else that we didn't cover? Any other things that you use, websites, tools, tricks that you want to share before we sign off for the day?
Oh, good question. So CodePen.io, Dribble, like I said, Stack Overflow, like you said, Scott, is also really useful. But I guess it's quite difficult because it's a niche area, and you like I said, you end up having to work around stuff a lot. So if I can plug in, subscribe to my blog.
Yes, there we go. That's exactly what I was waiting for. I was like, come on, she's got to put it in there. I'm giving her the softball.
Yeah.
She should be able to hit that out of the park. Yes.
That sounded awful. That sounded like, oh, don't look at any other tools. Just look at me. No, but yeah, if you want to learn how to do it step by step, you're more than welcome to kind of subscribe to my blog, and I'll do my absolute best to make it as simple as I can. Whether you're deaf or not deaf, you're welcome.
I spent a little time in your blog, and I was like, oh.
Have you?
Blog so ugly. Like it's
sorry.
It was a standard out of the box theme from Blogger back in like 2009 or something, and I made it so it was wider, which is probably a bad idea. It's like we're wasting all this space on the side, and no one goes to my blog because they want to. They go because they have to find some bit of information I have posted there. No one go from one thing to the other thing. So, again, yin to my yin. I appreciate those things. So, thanks for sharing those links and your tips. And I'm sure that that YouTube channel will be excellent. Will be well versed. And Scott, I don't know the last time you got 1,000 likes at Twitter, because I never have. So it's always interesting to see. It'll probably get 10,000
all the time, Daryl. All the time.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I like the idea about, Kristine, you talk about like, the CSS battle type thing for PowerApps. It's almost like maybe you get people to submit. Daryl could submit his worstest Power App that he's ever made.
Oh, fix my app. Yeah.
And then you can make it look beautiful and pretty.
Yeah, it's like the extreme makeover, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Extreme canvas inker. Yes, that'd be interesting.
It's like you look at it and you're quietly dying inside, and then it's like. Yeah, Kristine reacts to Daryl's apps. Yeah, maybe that's another channel we could do.
Yeah, you've been voluntold to submit the first app, Daryl.
Okay. All right. This is getting out of control. This is getting out of control. Oh.
You brought it on yourself, Daryl. I mean, let's face it. Opening with the whole yin and yang thing was just.
Yeah. You literally asked for it in the first sentence.
Well, I very much enjoyed this. It's been a really good discussion, really look forward to seeing where you're going to take it next, and all the new things you're going to be bringing out, and going to be subscribing to that YouTube channel as soon as it's there.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
So our listeners can find you on Twitter. They can find you on LinkedIn now, and you have your blog. What's your blog's URL?
Yes, so it's my first name, surname.com, and so it's KristineKolodziejski.com.
Kolodziejski, okay.
And then my GitHub repo as well, which is the same handle as my Twitter. So actually, no, it's not. Sorry, it isn't. I'm lying. I've just had to have a look. It's Miss Kristine 94. That's my GitHub repo. I've got, I think, 12 components there now. Feel free to check that out as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, Scott, that's how our listeners can get a hold of our guests. How can our listeners get a hold of us?
Well, Daryl, you always ask this. I would think by now you knew, but I'll tell you anyway, Daryl. But yes, you can email us.
Should we cut this section out? Did we just say forget it? I don't know. It's kind of it's a shtick now. I know it's a shtick.
Yeah, we have to do it. One day I'll forget, and then it'll just add it, mix it up a little bit.
Yeah,
I didn't do it last time. It was really hard.
Wait, what is it again? But yes, we would love to hear from you. If you want to email us, so you can email us at cast@xrmtoolbox.com, or you can get us on social media at xrmtoolcast, and let us know, if you've got any interesting things you want us to check out, or you've got questions for Kristine, get in touch.
Awesome.
Great meeting you virtually, Kristine, and I appreciate all that you're doing. And we'll have to talk to you later.
No, thank you so much for having me on your show. I feel like this has been a kind of dream for me. So, thanks for having me. Like I said, I've been following for a while now. So, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll see you very soon.
And keep the drums and the piano videos coming.
Thank you so much.
I've seen a piano one. I need to see a drum video.
Okay, I will get something uploaded.
Awesome. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Brilliant. Have a good day. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
This has been the XRM Toolcast with Daryl and Scott Daryl. Produced by Lynn Zawin. If you have any questions or suggestions, please send them to cast@xrmtoolbox.com, tweet @XRM Toolcast, or hit us up on our LinkedIn XRM Toolcast page.